Folks, welcome to our, what month is it? July?
July.
Monthly meeting. Tonight, the agenda is relatively short, and then we'll have to second here.
Can you just replace batteries in that?
No, it's just that I had the focus on the other screen. So, the agenda is relatively short, so, BluWave-ai has asked if they could do an update. And actually, we'll be happy to talk to you guys as much as you want. If you want feedback or whatever, happy to provide that. Okay, so aside from that, we have our regular features. We have the news, which is Lawrence is going to do. And we also have past and future events. So we have a few events coming up. I think there's 6 or 7. There's actually quite a few. So we'll go over those. And there's a few that where we could use more volunteers for the event. Okay. So, so the first presentation is BluWave-ai. So, Chris, you want to plug in?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for hosting us once again. It's always great to come out and kind of share with our local hometown EV club what we've been up to. So we're BluWave-ai. For those of you who don't know us, tech startup based in Canada. So just to quickly introduce ourselves, we're BluWave-ai. My name's Chris. This is Alex. We're product managers on the team there. And we're a tech startup based in Canada. We do artificial intelligence, cloud-based software for better optimizing the use of renewable energy and electric vehicle charging in smart grids. And one of our projects is a product line called EV Everywhere that lets us take a certain amount of control over privately owned EV charging through a driver app that you can link to your vehicle. And having a number of EVs on the platform through that app, we're able to coordinate and time the charging to do things that's useful to utilities. So basically, we're forming a bridge between people who own electric vehicles and electrical grid distribution companies and system operators who have an interest in being able to do things more efficiently by using software to manage that EV charging. But they're not able to come to your house and cut a contract with each of you individually to be able to do that. So our platform is acting as the intermediary to be able to do that. We have a project that's been running live with Hydro Ottawa. Partly funded by the Ontario Independent Electricity System Operator. I think we've been live with vehicles under control for almost a year now, or more than a year. Going back to July. It's July already.
Came to you guys about a year and a half ago. Not last Christmas. Christmas before that, I think we were at. So yeah, we came to you guys not last Christmas, but Christmas before that, asking to start testing. I think at the time we had 20 vehicles, just trying to get everything figured out. So since then we've been, as you guys probably know, we've been doing DR events. We have much more. We started with Tesla, and we have 9 brands right now. So yeah, we've come far. Thanks to you guys for helping us get started there, and we just wanted to share some updates. So I'll do my best.
Yeah, right, thanks. So I guess to begin with, what we'll do is we'll go through some of the results we've seen to date from our deployment with Hydro Ottawa. I think it's interesting. Hopefully you think it's interesting. We've been able to collect some data on charging patterns right here in Ottawa. And as Alex mentioned, we've been running DR or demand response events using the pool of EVs here. We have just shy of 200 in the city. And we're able to basically strategically curtail the charging groups of those EVs at times when load on the grid is higher. So to give an example of that, during the recent heat waves, we've been running a lot of these events in the evenings since Ontario, since the early 2000s, basically. We've been hitting new records. The heat wave in June set a new record on the Ontario grid for overall load. And actually tonight was maybe forecast to, but I haven't checked it recently. So yeah, we're seeing some really, really intense as a result of the, climate change driven heat waves we're seeing right now. Really intense strain on the grid. We're not at the point with 200 EVs where we can practically move the needle on that, but the goal of the program right now is to demonstrate that this works, demonstrate to utilities that they should be pursuing programs like this, in order to not have to spend a bunch of money installing hardware upgrades everywhere. You can use software to coordinate things a little more intelligently, do things a little more efficiently, and save everyone, a lot of money in the long run, in addition to doing, doing good for humanity and the planet. So really win-win. So I guess without further preamble, we'll take you into some of the results. Feel free to jump in if you have questions. Happy to kind of discuss things as we go. So yeah, the first thing we're looking at here is the adoption curve for EV Everywhere in Ottawa. So this goes back to, I think, we're showing back to July of last year. So a little bit over 12 months of data here. As Alex mentioned, we started out with a relatively small pool of users just to test things out for the first few months in the first half of 2024. A lot of them were EVCO members. I think we only started out with Teslas on the platform. And at the end of the summer of last year, we started promoting things in earnest through Hydro Ottawa. So we did a couple of email campaigns out to an email list they have of people who have had level 2 chargers installed at their homes. So that's the resource they have right now as a utility. It's not comprehensive. I think they have about 3,000 names on the list. I think EV adoption in Ottawa is probably closer to 10K, maybe a little higher at this point. Raymond's nodding, so I'm in the right ballpark there. So what we've seen is we get these really nice jumps in enrollment every time the utility sent out a communication about the program to encourage people to sign up. So you can see the first shelf there is at the end of August 2024. That corresponds to an email outreach from Hydro Ottawa. Second one lands, got laser, so we use it. Second one lands sort of late September 2024. Again, big jump from the Hydro Ottawa campaign. The third one is a smaller response from the same list, which puts us up above 150 vehicles enrolled. And then this small bump in January is actually from a social media campaign that we ran ourselves to kind of test out alternate paths for getting people onto the platform. I can speak more to that if you like. But yeah, as of today, we've kind of seen a steady increase. Hydro Ottawa has, for the time being at least, like not pump the brakes, but stop doing the additional outreach while we kind of measure how the system works, figure out how well people respond to the incentives they're getting to participate. And actually, that's an important element of this, right? If you sign up for a program like this, make your battery and charging available for control to your utility and provide value to them. There's a path for people who do that to also, take a share in that value as well. So with Hydro Ottawa, at least, we are running a bill credit program where people got a bonus to sign up for a credit on the bill rather to sign up. And then for every month that they participate in these demand response events that interrupt or shift their charging away from peak hours, they're also getting an additional, I think, $10 on their bill every month.
15, I think.
15, sorry, 15. Yeah, so we've been running the program that way, and we're kind of measuring how well it works, right? When we put out a demand response call at a given time of day, how much load can we take off the grid for X number of EVs that are on the platform?
Yeah, good question. So where does your software sit? Does it sit at the utility?
Where does the software
Where does it sit?
The software sit?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's a cloud-based solution. So the question was, where does the software sit, or where does the software live?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's not something that's run by the utility. We run it as a software as a service product. So we run the software in the cloud. We build and manage the application that drivers get in order to control their charging and link their EVs to the platform. And the utility subscribes to this.
And how does it collect this information? Does it talk to the meters, smart meters, and the
So we actually speak directly to the EV via the telematics. So the same system, the same cellular antenna that you get your over-the-air updates through, where they would connect to your OEM app to tell you what your state of charge is, tell you, control your door lock, unlock, all that feature set. We use a service that kind of piggybacks on that connection to be able to get information about the battery capacity of the vehicle, the state of charge, whether it's plugged in, and it allows us to do on and off control of the charging as well.
the number that you have with the battery capacity? Is it the total capacity of the 191 vehicles that you have on? Is it the total?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an estimate. I think it's based on 63 kilowatt hours per vehicle, including plug-in hybrid electric, and based on the stats for Canadian adoption of fully electric BEV versus plug-in hybrid.
That's an estimate, not
Just an estimate,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a real number that you collect from the.
not the real number. I think we are actually going to have that tabulated sometime soon, though. So I was.
But it does give you a good idea of how fast it scales and how much electricity you could, curtail with just a small amount of vehicles. Right?
Yeah.
So for those of you guys who have been with us for a while, you guys remember the first version of the app was pretty simple. The new version of the app has, you can put in what kind of charger you have, and we're better able to collect like statistics for the vehicle. So these numbers will be able to update in due course. So.
And the estimated charging power, what's this number? What's this kind of numbers coming?
So that's just for illustrative purposes. If all those vehicles were to charge at the same time, that's roughly the amount of power that could be pulled from the grid by them. So the idea here is to put it in context and sort of in terms of the grid picture and the load that's on the grid right now. This is not enough to make or break Ottawa's electrical grid as a city, but it is at the point where, if too many of these vehicles plugged in and charged at the same time, say half for the sake of argument, you have a load on the grid that's equivalent to, a small industrial park or a small hospital. It's a significant amount of electricity.
So what's the power needed per car?
How much power do we curtail per car?
Yeah.
Per car? Yes. We'll get to that. I've got some slides on that. Yeah. Any other questions on that before we move on? No. All right, we'll continue. So one of the things we're interested in as part of this program is understanding how sort of the baseline trends of EV use change over the course of the year. This is one of the things that utilities generally don't have good information about. And this is something that we can do to help them understand, that this is a thing that they should start pursuing now. They shouldn't wait until adoption numbers are higher. They shouldn't be waiting until V2G is a thing. That's something we hear all the time. Is that, they're kind of, once V2G comes along, we can manage EV charging and help the grid. Our message on that is no, it should be understood now. It can, in certain areas, if adoption is high and the local distribution infrastructure is old, it can cause damage to transformers relatively soon. I think the number is 25% of houses having a single EV charging could be enough to start causing transformer damage.
So typical transformer has what, 5 to 10 houses on it? Something like that. It's a fairly small number, right?
In that ballpark, yeah.
So it doesn't take very many EVs for it to start becoming a problem.
And of course, what we see is there is hotspotting in adoption, right? Because it goes through people's sort of networks, right? And your neighbors get EVs, it makes you more likely to adopt one because you see it working for them, and it's easy to see how it could fit into your life. So what we're looking at here is a curve showing when EVs and auto are actually charging as a function of time of day. We've got two different data sets shown here. It's a little hard to read, but fall is in orange and winter is in blue. And we're seeing a couple of interesting features here. And particularly, I'll point to the shelves in the evening curve. I should also mention midnight is at the middle of the graph here. 1 p.m. is here and 11 a.m. is over here. And what we're seeing is that at 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., you get these nice shelves that correspond to the starts of the standard time of use rate, as well as the ultra low overnight time of use rate that I'm assuming many EV drivers are taking advantage of because you use a lot of electricity, so it makes sense too. And this is something that, is of interest to utilities because they can, through the data we collect on this platform, see, how much of a peak in terms of EV charging is being induced by those time of use rates, right? Those rates are designed to shift load away from peak hours, but as adoption increases, you're eventually going to see a scenario where those peaks end up being big enough on their own that they still cause challenges for the grid. So this is something we can help understand, or help utilities understand rather, as for the set of EVs we have on, when exactly are they charging relative to when they're plugged in. Another important thing I'll mention here is that if you look at, I don't know if I have it in this deck, but if you look at when the EVs are actually plugged in, it's not a sharp peak at midnight, like we see here in the charge data. It actually extends from midnight till about 7 a.m., which is what you expect, right? Everyone's in bed, they leave the vehicle plugged in overnight. We see up to about 40% of vehicles in the city plugged in on any given night. People don't generally plug in every single day. It doesn't seem to be the trend.
But some cars can be configured to stop charging at a certain time, right? So that's what I do. So the car will stop charging either at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. depending on the day, right?
Yeah.
So that pushes a little further into the night.
So you're one of the good ones. What we see out of the overall trend in the city is that there's a pretty sharp peak at 11 p.m. and midnight, and it tapers off again by about 2 a.m. So there's capacity actually to spread this charging out till 7 a.m. without costing anyone any money on their hydro bill, and making sure that people are still, charged in time for the next departure target, which on our platform you set up in your app, while potentially shaving 20 or 30% off of the peak load that the residential grid has to handle from EVs. So there's really, really serious potential here to, not have to take poles and wires solutions for utility to accommodate this charging load.
I think what you're saying is that you know when they're plugged in,
Yep.
but not necessarily actively charging.
No, we actually know both. So
Right.
this graph is showing the active charging time.
Yeah, so you see by the time midnight comes along, you see everything's plugged in, but not, well, probably charging at midnight, but not necessarily charging.
Yeah, so generally there's like a ramp through the evening, so people come, the ramp starts around 4 p.m., runs up until 11 or midnight. And the charging peaks right then, right after.
Somebody online is the microphone.
Somebody online, mute their mic.
You can see what it is. No?
I like the
Can you
continued
guys
charging
mute, anybody who's online,
until seven AM in the
unless
winter
you're
too.
talking?
So
I like the continued charging until 7 AM in the winter too, because we can see that people don't leave in the winter until, up to 8, right? Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And so they're preheating their cabins before they leave for the day.
So, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to kind of get first eyes on how this looks in Ottawa, right? Like in aggregate, how are 200 EVs charging? When are they charging? When are they actually plugged in? And when do we have flexibility to ship that load around? Help our utilities save money and save all the ratepayers in the city money. There we go. So one of the other elements of the program, in addition to kind of understanding charging patterns, is to run demand response events. So at a given hour of day, we'll try to curtail as many EVs as we can, switch off the charging, wait until later. We set some guardrails on that to make sure that people don't have a bad experience. So if you have a departure target set up that we wouldn't be able to meet, if we switched off your charging, we don't touch your charging. If your car's below 30%, we don't touch it. If you're not charging at home, we don't touch it. It's assumed you're on the road and you're trying to get charged as quickly as possible. But otherwise, if it's plugged in at home and there's enough time to shift that charging to later, during a demand response event, we'll switch your charger off in order to take load off the grid at strategic times. And again, right now we're in a bit of an experimental phase still with the utility where we're proving out how well this works. How many EVs do you need on? How do you incentivize people to keep them interested? And what kind of power can you take off the grid based on those numbers?
So in my case, I configured 2 locations. Home, you can only have one, right?
Yep.
And I've got another, which is my cottage, but my cottage could also be curtailed, right? So I don't know if you guys have a way for me to say, yes, curtail here and not curtail there type of thing.
Yeah, so we're moving towards, I mean, it's a complicated picture, but we're moving towards a model where places where you stay plugged in overnight, you have the ability to curtail. If you're doing if you set up multiple locations that you use within a day, we don't have the ability to handle that complexity yet. So if you're looking at being plugged in, say from 1 to 4 p.m. at work, and then again at home after 6 p.m., we want to get to a point where we're balancing charging between those locations to optimize everything as much as possible. But right now we're only doing the overnight version of that, not multiple sessions per day. But yep.
I just want to point out that's a potentially risky feature to enable, because if somebody plugs into a public charger overnight and your system stops the charge, then you probably won't be able to restart without them re-authenticating payments on the public charger. Unless maybe you, instead of completely canceling it, just drop the charge speed down really low.
So you just said if you're not at home, they won't.
Yeah,
curtail it, right?
he was saying that he wanted to add another feature where you could enable it to do curtailing anywhere you are as long as it's overnight L2 charging.
That's a good question. So the question had to do with whether we could curtail the public chargers if we added the ability to do that in other locations beside home. It still only works at locations that the user deliberately configures in the app.
Okay.
So we check the GPS when you start charging. If you're at one of those locations, it's fair game to curtail. If you're not, we don't touch it.
And actually, that feature will really heavily depend on the brand of the car as well, because of whatever they actually allow in their API. Like, I'm pretty sure the Tesla API only tells you if the car is at home or work or at a safety police or other.
Yep.
I don't think it says the actual coordinates, so I could be wrong.
Or the location of the phone or the car.
The car, and there are different levels of permission that a user can select. It's all pretty granular in the app, and we, make it clear what we use these permissions for as well, because of course we're concerned about data security. Tesla is actually one of the nicer APIs to work with, though, because they have features like that where the user can set up a home location on their side and we can just read, are you at home or not? One of the other elements of this for us, though, is having a home location entered into the app and set up lets us provide the correct information about what's going on with the grid. Because within our platform, we have this concept called the Blue Score, which is basically our sort of rolled up single metric indicator for how good a time it is to use energy on the grid. So we take into account the renewable mix, whether we're burning a lot of gas to meet high demand or whether, it's the middle of the day and solar's doing a lot of output. And we also take into account the load on the grid. So the more strain there is on the grid, the lower the score. This actually drives some of our passive optimization that moves charging around outside of demand response events. But that's also tied to location, I guess, to your point. So when you set up a home location, you're getting a score that's to the most detailed level we have relevant to that location. So Raymond, for example, I think he was saying he set up a location here in Ontario as well as over in Quebec. He's going to see different scores for those two because the Quebec grid is mostly on hydroelectric. Ontario varies a lot more over the course of the day in terms of what the GHG content is, the electricity that's going to your car. So you can see that in app and sort of see what's going on with it. So what we're looking at here is basically just a spread of the hours of day that we've run these demand response events at. Again, midnight's in the middle, 1 p.m. on the left, just 11 a.m. on the right. We've concentrated most of it in the afternoon and evening, simply because that's when there is typically the most strain on the grid, especially during the summer, which is when we're running a lot of these trials. We are still planning to fill in the rest of the timeline though, so we have sort of multiple data points per hour. So of course, like middle of the night is obviously not like a high strain time on the grid, but we're still running these events periodically to, confirm in real life that the EVs will respond, that people aren't opting out, etc. So in the name of science, kind of, we're feeling the rest of the curve.
Conceptually, there could be situations where there's something that happens on the grid overnight. A nuclear plant goes offline or something, and you'd want to stop charging cars.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a really good point. So as like emergency response capacity kind of picture. And also, I mean, peak hours keep getting more complicated as electrification proceeds. We are likely to move towards a winter peaking scenario in the future as more heating systems get electrified. And it's going to be different every couple of years. So we got to prepare and we got to know what the answer is as to like, can you do this at 1 a.m.? Can you do this at 4 a.m.?
Oops, you have to point it to the laptop.
Yeah.
There you
Got a bit of lag too. Oh, too far. There we go. All right. So this is the one that might be of interest. This is how much power we're actually getting out of the EVs that we have on the platform as a function of the time of day. So we have 3 curves here. There's a minimum, an average, and max for all the demand response events we've run here in Ottawa. And we have it normalized. So I'll explain the unit. Right now, we only have about 200 EVs on the platform here. We've normalized to a bin of 1,000 EVs. And, as that adoption curve increased over the course of the year, we're correcting out for having fewer EVs at the start of that. So the standard unit we've arrived on is if we had 1,000 EVs on the platform in a given location, here's how much energy you can push around with them at a given time of day. And the results we're seeing are equivalent to more than 2 megawatts per 1,000 EVs for the record event that we've seen. And an average that peaks out around 1.2 to 1.5 megawatts in the middle of the night as well. So again, pretty serious amount of energy. I mentioned earlier that a megawatt is, small industrial park, small hospital. We have 10,000 EVs in Ottawa. So if they were all on the platform, 10 of those could be taken off the grid. It's a serious amount of energy.
There's 750,000 light duty vehicles in Ottawa, right? So when most of those are electric, it'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. And generally, it's a question of power and not energy that's being put on the grid because vehicles sit still all the time, right? I think the number I heard at one point was that 95% of the time, a typical passenger vehicle is just parked. So if it's parked and plugged in, it can take on energy at any point in time strategically. Versus the amount of power if things are poorly coordinated is really, really high. So it could be a lot of strain on the grid, a big spike, and then nothing afterwards for a while. And that's what we're working on smoothing out with this platform.
The 100 kilowatt number, is it the charging power of the charger power, essentially?
Yeah, correct. So this is
That's a lot of power at the home. Charger, have a charger at your house for 200 kilowatt. That's a lot.
Sorry, that's not for an individual home. So this is for 1,000 EVs. You can take 1.5 megawatts off the grid using a demand response call. So this is taking into account all the different factors that affect how much energy we can actually get. So you think a certain number of the EVs aren't actually plugged in, a certain number have too low of energy and they won't be able to be curtailed because they have to charge to meet their target. a certain number of the user is going to opt out because they don't want us to interfere with the charging, and that's fine. You have that option as well.
So
So-
200 kilowatts is the total for thousand vehicles?
No, that's if the energy provider, if Hydro Ottawa just really needs an extra 200 kilowatts on the grid somehow, if they take a 330
Oh, they take it from the
offline,
battery.
that, if they take 330 offline,
Not the
they can get 200 kilowatts.
Yeah, so this is maybe, I'm hearing some good questions here. It's maybe a little counterintuitive to think that we're doing something useful to the grid without vehicle to grid. But there's actually all kinds of existing programs, like the IESO or utilities in Ontario will pay tens of thousands of dollars to a factory, for example, to switch off on, a Thursday afternoon, late in the afternoon when everyone's running their ACs. There's a baseline load that's being drawn from the grid. And they, in order to avoid, damaging infrastructure or having to burn a ton of natural gas to make up for the difference, they will pay to have people take load off the grid. And that's what's referred to as demand response. So without even pushing energy back to the grid, by having EVs that are ready to be curtailed, stop charging at a moment's notice, we can still deliver a lot of value to utilities and system operators. So this is before we even having the conversation about pushing energy back to the grid, which is really exciting, and it's going to, make things even more powerful for using EVs as a grid solution.
Sure. There's two kind of ways to look at this, right? So from a neighborhood level, kind of looking at you and your neighbors, right? You're helping, the utility has issues with bottlenecks in the grid, right? Transformers overheating, hot summer day, just degradation of the stuff inside the transformer. So that's one. And then we look at this kind of zooming out some more big picture. It's like all the EVs in Ottawa, all the EVs in Ontario, that adds up to a substantially more it's just more load, right? So, the ISO, the system operator, is interested in this big picture stuff. Hydro Ottawa or Hydro One, they're interested kind of at the neighborhood level. But, one EV in of itself is not huge significant, but you can see how it kind of rapidly, there's different scales here, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to expand on that a little bit, if we have roughly 1 megawatt, 1,000 EVs, we have 200,000 EVs in Ontario right now. So there's roughly 200 megawatts to play with there. And when Ontario experiences heat wave, like the ones we've seen recently, if I recall correctly, 1 degree Celsius of heat above 16 Celsius equates to about 300 megawatts of load on the grid from AC. So you're talking about, based on the number of EVs in Ontario today, if you could curtail, not even all of them, but curtail the number equivalent to what we've actually physically done in Ottawa, you could knock the equivalent of a degree Celsius off heat wave, or 2/3 of a degree Celsius off the heat wave for AC. It's really cool to think about the potential that could be done with this kind of thing, just with totally unobtrusive shifts in people's charging behavior. Like ideally, the EV driver doesn't even notice this is going on because it doesn't affect their routine. I keep pointing at the, I'm going to figure it out in time for the last slide. One other, I know we're taking up a lot of your agenda here, so I'll try and keep moving. One other element that we're looking at is varying the time duration of these events that we call. So we've done some really short ones. The typical length is an hour, but we're also starting to experiment with, 2 hours, 3 hours, see if we can still get similar responses or have, similar numbers of people participate. Because that's of interest too, when we have these heat wave scenarios, being able to take load off the grid for longer periods of time is really helpful.
Yeah, but by default, you're participating. You have to opt out if you don't want to participate, right?
So that's right. Yeah. So when you set up your vehicle, you set up your charging location, you're also setting up a charging schedule that tells us when you need every day, I need it at this time at this state of charge. And we perform all of our actions within the constraints of that setup. All right, and then just a few notes on kind of what we have planned coming up as well. So we're planning to continue filling in gaps in this demand response data set that I showed you by filling in the other hours we don't have data for yet. We're going to continue working within the heat waves because it's really good to be able to say that we still got this response from EV drivers under the exact conditions that you'd want to be able to use it after the heat wave in the summer when the Ontario grid is under strain.
How do you do a demand response without knowing the rest of the load of the grid?
We do know the rest of the load on the grid. That's the thing. Yeah. So as I mentioned, our platform deals with renewables and other elements of smart grids as well. So as part of this platform, we track in real time what is the load on the Ontario grid and in other regions. And it's actually present in the app as well. So when you're about to charge, you can take a look at your region for the current generation mix. how much of each generation source is present in the electricity you're using, and also take a look at the current load on the grid as well.
So where do you get this information?
It's on the app.
From IESO, from the Ontario Independent Electricity System Operator. It's all public, actually.
Fine, is it? It's street time that you can get.
I think there's about an hour of lag, all told.
So there's kind of two things here, right? So at province level, we can get it from the ISO. And then they have a marketplace as well for demand response operating reserve, right? Their whole market renewal program. So through that mechanism, we can get the live provincial load. Through Hydro Ottawa, we are connected with their systems. So certain substations and transformers and stuff, we can get data. Now, having said that, some of the transformers here, it's delayed by a couple hours, delayed by a day, right? So there is some state estimation that we'll eventually have to work on. But we do have integration with Hydro Ottawa and IS already. So if you go to the app itself, if you pull down on the boost bar up here, you can see like the makeup of the grid right now. So if you want to see for yourself what the peak is, how much is renewables right now, we can provide that.
And maybe just one other point of interest here is that this summer, I think starting maybe next week, we're actually going to start demonstrating not just demand response using electric vehicles, but electric vehicles in coordination with grid attached battery storage that Hydro Ottawa was brought online recently. So we'll be using the two to meet, the needs of these curtailment calls that we're putting up, which is really cool as well, right? Because the vision here is not just to use a single asset in isolation, but see what capacity do we have spread across, all the different stuff plugged into the grid, and how can we move that energy around to best meet the goal.
So if I can speak to that a bit. So our partner for that is a company called Moment Energy in Vancouver. And what they do is they take old EV batteries and they put them together and they recycle them. So we're using two of those. There's one at the experimental farm area XO. So that's kind of where they do like the autonomous driving testing. Mm-hmm. And then we have another one at a substation in Bell's Quarters, also operated by Hydro Ottawa. So we're combining that with vehicles to be like, if there's a demand response event, if there's any sort of grid services, we, whatever we can do with the battery, we can do EV and vice versa. So.
And
Excuse me, can you go back to your previous slide?
yeah, absolutely.
So the way that you do the demand response is essentially shutting off some chargers and turning on other chargers based on the geographical location of.
Yeah, that's right.
But like you said earlier, what they don't use the charger, so we don't use smart chargers for this. We use the car's telematics. So it's the car that's being told to stop charging or start charging, right? There's reasons for that.
Yeah, right. You have the car has to have this, communication. It has to be at estimate. You cannot really or all electric vehicles car has this communication system.
So right now we have Tesla, Kia, Hyundai, Mini, Jaguar, BMW, Audi. We're beta testing Toyota and Chevy, and we're working on Ford as well.
But I'm turning my car into an electric vehicle, and that'll have this system.
They're turning it into EV.
Sorry?
Did you say you're turning it into EV?
Yeah, I'm turning mine.
What kind is it?
The opposite.
Oh, that's cool. We should talk after. That's really cool. And then just a technical update from our side as well. We released a totally new redeveloped version of our driver app in June. We're really excited about it. It was built here in Canada and at our office in Summerside, PEI. A lot of work went into it. We think it's a much better package overall. And one of the things, while Raymon's been kindly testing it for us and giving us feedback, we're able to support multiple EVs now. We're able to support multiple charging home locations. It's easier to get at information about the grid and there's more detail there. And we're also working on some other features like insights into charging history, cost, estimated GHGs. And one of the other elements I'll comment on as well is that we've also introduced an in-app reward system. So previously you were able to plant trees by charging cleaner. We're expanding on that. So you can plant trees, donate to charities, and there's also redemption for coupons and gift cards basically for users who are interested in that. The idea here is that, as I mentioned, there's value being delivered to the grid by people participating in this program. We need different avenues to share that value with them. So for users who are downloading the app who we don't have a utility contract with yet, we can still provide them with, some kind of payback for making their vehicle available to charge at better times for the grid. And in that way, we're able to kind of build the community of drivers while we're also building our community of utility partners that we're working with too. Quick comment on compatibility. I know I ran off a bunch of names earlier, but as I mentioned, we are currently testing Ford. Raymond's already connected us with a couple of drivers who are willing to kick the tires on this and see how it's all performing. And we also have Chevy and Toyota that we recently added to the app as well. So we're interested in hearing from people who own and drive those kind of vehicles. If there's anyone in your network who does, and you'd be willing to put them in touch with us, that'd be awesome. We're interested in talking to people and getting some real world results out of these vehicles. And I'll also mention, Porsche as well. I think we're interested in trying. If you know anybody with a Taycan, I wouldn't mind a ride either.
They won't let us expense one, so.
The last thing I'll mention, which is kind of cool, is there's a program that spun up this summer with Hydro London, which is looking at pulling together a bunch of different types of assets for demand response in their territory. And we're talking to them about participating with a pool of EVs. We don't have much presence yet in Hydro London service area, but if we can get a few EVs on before the end of the summer there, we can start proving out similar things to them or with them as we have here in Ottawa. And this is really interesting because they're using a platform that pulls together a bunch of different types of assets. So like I mentioned, industrial sites that are able to curtail grid attached battery storage, as well as, other smaller distributed energy resources. We want to bring electric vehicles to the table as part of this program and show how they can be coordinated and add to this kind of thing. And again, there's an opportunity here for drivers to, be paid in exchange for their participation in different ways. So we want to prove this works. We want lots of utilities saying, well, yeah, this is great. We need these programs to get EV drivers and electric vehicles participating in helping the grid. I think it's a benefit for the drivers. It helps take load off the grid at peak times, which is carbon emitting load, generally speaking. And it also helps us prevent, as a society, over investing in hardware solutions when we can use software to do things efficient. So that's the goal here. Again, if you have any membership in Hydro One territory outside the city, we'd be keen to talk to them.
Well, there's some in Ottawa, right?
Yeah, exactly. The borders kind of.
Yeah, so Kentville is one place where you're looking at because there's specific issues there with
Yes.
congestion, right?
That's correct.
So anyways, lots of potential there for sure. So you want people who are not participating in another program, like if someone's in Hilo in Quebec, you don't want them to participate also because you'd sort of you'd be fighting each other, right?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, actually. It kind of depends on the program as to whether we can operate in Quebec or not. So it would have to be case by case there.
We have talked to Quebec, and their basic, their stance is like, they don't really care too much about competition. They're like, if you can bring us vehicles that, capacity, you're welcome to participate. I think their price is $500 per megawatt or something like that they'll pay per hour. So, they're not gonna get in our way, so. And actually, the way that Hydro Quebec does it is through a white label charger, right? So you have to buy a charger through them.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, if you already have a charger, then you're ineligible
Well,
for,
they use OCPP, right?
yeah.
Which is different from what you do. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we do that too on the fleet side, so bus companies, taxi companies and so forth, but as you know, there's just so many different versions of, different chargers out there.
Mhm.
So it was a trade-off, right? It's, as much problems as we have integrating with the vehicle, it's much more harder to do the charger integration, right? Because everyone's got a different one, so.
And the approaches could be complementary. Like there's a world in which a program like Hilo also leverages one like ours, which is able to reach the vehicles when they're not connected to an approved charger spot from Hilo. Right?
So what I want as a next step is you're controlling my air conditioner and turning it down.
We've been asked,
We actually hear a lot of interest in that, and I think we have we're in talks with some of the utilities in Prince Edward Island actually, where we have our office about just that.
And water heaters are.
Water heaters, heat pumps, basically what you generally refer to as thermal energy storage in households. Because again, these are significant loads and they can be shifted around intelligently to make things easier on the grid. If you have the information and you're able to control them. All right, I think we'll wrap up there. Thanks so much for your attention.
Actually, I have one question.
Sure.
Am I the only one that had a problem with the upgrade to the new app? I lost all my settings.
No, you're not, but we're happy to talk to you about
Okay.
that if you want to.
Because I just realized I wasn't getting any alerts.
So,
Okay.
I lost my settings, but they came back for some reason.
No, I just had to re-input mine again.
And the other thing that happened to me is when I added, tried to add the second Tesla, both of them were erased. But then when I added them a second time, both of them came in. So there's the little things that need to be worked
Absolutely.
out, right?
Any of the stuff that you find as a community that we have direct contact with is super valuable for us to hear.
You
Right?
might
So-
want to let users know that they're gonna have to re-register in a lot of cases, because I didn't even notice.
Okay.
I was curious, on the old version of the app, your grid smart events or demand response events used to have a schedule.
Mhm.
I didn't find that in the new version. Does that not exist anymore?
But it's, can you go back there?
Yeah, we can move on.
So it shows up here. So I believe you can pick up that. Yeah, the yellow part. So there isn't one right now, as far as I know. It's supposed to be architect.
Isn't that the one scheduled?
Actually, no, it's good, right?
So you want
Sorry, just let me. Put this in.
I thought we were gonna run one this evening because the heat wave's still on.
So there is some context, like some text here, but you can see it visually, right? So basically it's like, here's when you plug it in, here's when you unplug, here's the time it takes to charge. We show the DR event occurring here, and you can see here that you're gonna have some time between when you're charged to your target and when you're unplugged. So,
Is there so is it like a time of day?
yeah.
Okay, because it's blatantly obvious to me, like,
Yeah, we're working
I
on
must
that.
use scan.
Some more sort of an explanation layer on top of this to help people
Okay.
orient themselves to it. But yeah, that whole bond needs to never sound sort of it's not that.
Yeah, it says,
If you go to settings, there's, we go into tutorial, but maybe that's not good enough.
Maybe we can take this offline so that we can keep it on the agenda.
So is there any other questions from anybody else?
I have one.
So Terry? go
Yeah,
ahead.
if you're on net metering and you're maxing out, you produce a lot. Would this be a way to use more of your potential solar energy through your car at night by feeding it back, or through the day, I should say, by feeding it back through the grid from the car?
So you're asking, if you're on net metering at home, so presumably you're producing your own solar and maybe you have a battery. You've already put the max amount back into the grid. You're asking if this could be used to potentially capture some of that and charge your own vehicle, right?
No, I'm asking if you could actually, if you have too much solar and they're just taking it and not paying you or giving you the credit for it because you don't consume that much from the grid. That's the way I understand it. I don't have net metering yet, but I understand that there's a maximum amount that you can actually contribute to the grid before you're just giving it to them free. Would this be a way to actually get remuneration for it through the car?
We have to do that. We'd have to integrate with probably your solar panels. So we don't have that yet, but it's a good idea. I think there's a niche of people that it would be really useful for.
Are you even allowed to have more solar than what you're expected to use? There's a limit on what you can install on some.
Yeah, there's a limit how much you can install and they size it based on your normal consumption, right? So that at the end of the year, you balance out, right?
Balance out at the end of the year.
Now, there are some systems that will, if it's a very good day, the panels will produce more than the inverters could take.
Yeah, but it's in the inverter's limitation, you're not.
So, yeah, you wouldn't be able to go and harvest energy anyways, you're right? Yeah.
So theoretically, you wouldn't be generating that much more than you're gonna get credits for, so. I'll find out by the end of next year.
And also, I'm thinking if you're just moving when you're charging the vehicle, it's not gonna make any difference. You're still using the same amount of kilowatts, right? So kilowatt hours, so.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a future piece of this in terms of integrating with behind the meter renewables, which we haven't got a time to yet. And there's also the question of what are you allowed to do if you're locally to.
Yeah. Cool, very cool. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah.
And again, the invitation is if you want more feedback on the app and all that, just send me a note and we'll.
Yeah, so we have a easier way in the app to provide feedback, but we'll handle some business cards so you guys can talk to us directly.
Are you guys sticking around till after we can talk offline?
Yeah, we can do it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to, quite a few members may have noticed already, but one of the undertakings we've taken from the EVCO board's point of view is just kind of modernizing our web presence. So I've been kind of working away. I work in the industry, but I'm not directly a developer. So I've been making my way through this theme, and so there may be a few little bugs here or there, but it's definitely more modern than what we had. So yeah, when you come here, a nice facelift on the website. We've started to reorganize some of the content as well, add new content. One of the things we want to do is kind of show and demonstrate in general across the internet what we do. At EVCO, we are thought leaders in a lot of cases. We're able to offer advice and test things as demonstrated, right before this by the BluWave-ai folks. We've also been invited to test out some new charger installations, and we've done some work with condo boards through the city. So, we do quite a bit that maybe a lot of people don't realize. So, it's part of just kind of shouting from the rooftops. This is who we are. This is what we do as a membership and as a board. So, we need something that's a little more modern to reflect that. So, come to the homepage is just kind of highlighting who we are, what we do. We highlight any of our events. So you can see that our monthly meeting's on here. We have an event coming up on FunFest. And then we've been trying to get a little bit more news and updates, because I know Raymond is often in the media. I know we even had a request from a newspaper this morning that hopefully we'll be able to shout about in the next couple days. So it's important that we spread this message. So you can see that we've posted a couple little things here. One of our most popular news items recently was actually our event that we talked about last meeting, is where we powered the Blackburn Fun Fair. So we've actually had another request come in today from another public event going on, and saying they heard about this and they're wondering if we were interested in participating. Clean Energy Podcast talked about this. I had sent them this link and things like that. So, it's important that we show that we're doing really great work. So yeah, like I said, a few little bugs to work out still, but that's to be expected with any new website. One part that we started to work on as well is kind of capturing in text a lot of the stuff that we talk about at our events to the general public, or in our meetings, or do presentations on, why EVs are great, why you should buy one. So we've started this kind of learn about EVs section that we've started to capture some of this officially. And we are getting kind of, we're popping up in search results for this type of stuff. So we put together this EV myths section. So if you know someone that is interested in an EV, but they keep kind of regurgitating the same myths to you, you could send them to our website and say, okay, check this out. This is pretty comprehensive. That being said, if there's anything in here that you think that we're missing, or new myths that have come up you've heard, let us know, and we'll write it up in here. So it's decent. And then we also have our EV charging information. So, at our events, one of the biggest questions we get is, okay, well, what do I need to charge it? How do I charge it? What do I need installed at home? Do I need to install at home? What's a J1772? What's NAC? So we've captured a lot of that information here. And then one thing that I did actually split out into its own page now is traveling with an EV, because we know that's one of the largest hangups for people is, you can't drive very far with an EV, which we know in the vast majority of cases in our own personal experiences that's not necessarily the case. So this is just kind of giving more information, and may draw in a few members, draw some more questions, that type of stuff. So that's about it. I just wanted to make sure, because I'm sure some of you may have noticed, but we haven't really talked about it yet. And we still do have our EV Experience website, which is the branding that we use to do our events. So we still own this website. The main things that we cross-post are our public events. And maybe that's something we could talk about, is whether we need two websites down the road. But for now, it's, this is kind of the public exposure part of what we do. That's it.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. So you probably saw there that it's EV Experience by EVCO, right? So there's a bit of a branding issue because now we have EV Experience and we have EVCO. So we're trying to sort of recombine the two. It's, you know, it's a bit of a problem, but we're going to get there, okay? So Lawrence, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, I have a question. Is there, do you still post the, or does the weekly meetings that happen Saturdays, is it posted on the website or?
Yes, so they should be posted on the website. Now, we just determined for this coming month where they would be. We did that today.
Okay.
So that will show up on the site probably in the next couple of days, okay? So the Kill and Coffee is what we're referring to,
Yep.
which we do that every week where we don't have something else, okay? So if you have something else, we're doing that other thing.
Got a few stories, bit of a quiet month, but tried to find the most interesting ones to share with all of you. Often when I see sales statistics articles, it's talking about the American market. It was nice to see one about the Canadian market and glad to share it. Yeah, it was cool to see that GM's actually #1 in our market now in terms of EV sales. I'm not sure who #2 is, probably either Ford or Tesla, if I had to guess. But I've been seeing a crazy amount of those Equinoxes out, especially in Quebec. And I've seen a lot of people driving them kind of spirited. I think they must have made them kind of fun. Yeah, 250% year-over-year increase from last year. Definitely, they're finally resolving their Ultium pack manufacturing issues and starting to come up in volume. So later than expected, but better than never. Also, when we eventually see the ISEV rebate come back, that should help increase sales even more. Probably a lot of people waiting for that at this point since it's been announced, but we don't have a date yet. There was a sort of UN decision that was published. It's not like a binding thing, but sometimes these decisions, declarations, or recommendations get used or referenced in legal cases in different courts around the world. But basically, the UN came out with a decision, a couple of decisions that were sort of discussed in the article. One is that basically they formally put out an opinion saying that, you know, fossil fuels are in decline, and we need to, you know, adopt and accept the alternatives. The other was that they said that failure to react to climate change could be something that could be litigated, especially for like smaller island nations or anybody who gets, you know, feels the impacts of climate change could potentially sue for damages. So again, it's not like they're not like a Supreme Court, so they can't make that decision binding, but that decision gets referenced in other courts, I suppose. This one got actually shared with me by Raymond, but the Grizzly, which is one of the most popular, rightfully so, level 2 chargers around. It's kind of interesting, but there's a bit of a dark underbelly to it I want to discuss. The program is good for consumers. So basically the way it works is instead of having to buy a charger, you get a charger for free, and then you have to pay a subscription. So, okay, from that perspective, long-term, obviously it's cheaper to just buy the charger outright because it's $120 per year for the subscription. After a few years, charger's going to pay for itself. However, there's one other factor here, which is that you actually get a rebate off of your subscription cost the more electricity you use through the charger. So why is that possible? How does that make any sense? Because if you used enough electricity, your charger would actually be free, or you do like making money. Okay, well, here's why. Basically, there's a scheme by which other companies who wish to buy carbon credits can pay United Chargers, because United Chargers, as long as any of their chargers that are connected to their network using the app, so all of their smart chargers, all of the charging that they actually track, they're essentially going out and saying, hey, we as a corporate entity offset X amount of carbon because we enabled X amount of EV charging, which offset X amount of gasoline burning, which is really like sketchy in my opinion, because it's like they didn't do anything, like the EV driver would have done the charging no matter what. So then what they're doing is they're going and selling those carbon credits to other companies who are then able to say, oh, look, we're net zero because we bought carbon credits, but there was no actual like real carbon curtailment that actually happened. But as a consumer, you can benefit from this craziness by getting a share of those carbon credits in the form of 3 cents per kilowatt hour.
I think what it really is, Lawrence, is that the $600 or $800 cost of the charger is really the barrier for people for a $70,000 EV. Like, so look at the 70,000, they can afford that, but then the at-home charger, like that's too far. So this free charger really unlocks that purchase of the $70,000 EV to get that onto the road. That's their logic. Like,
So I just want to make a comment on that. So the clean fuel standard is what actually has this provision, and it's not quite the carbon offset thing, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to classify different fuels as to their carbon impact, okay? And so a lot of people were advocating for this to be included in the clean fuel regulation, because originally there was supposed to be nothing, right? So what this does is it means that if people are charging cars, there's money that's made available that could be used for a bunch of things, including helping you with rebate. But what the purpose of the clean fuel standard is really much broader than that. So if you're a large consumer of power, you may be able to get credits by changing to electric power versus fossil fuels, right? So it's a bigger picture. Now, recently they could do it because they as an individual, you can't participate in this. You have to have a certain minimum. I think it's at one megawatt or something of capacity or something of the sort. Otherwise, you can't participate. So what they're doing is they're participating on your behalf, and you get the money back, right? Of course, sure they're taking a cut.
Probably taking the line share.
Because they need to finance savings, right?
Yeah, so like I'm not against them for consumers profiting from this program, but I'm definitely questioning whether it's an effective way to reduce carbon by claiming that this charging is directly offsetting this fuel when this consume like especially because their United Chargers is already selling some of these kilowatt hours or these credits or whatever they're called away from users who aren't even aware that that's happening. Like, let's say I went and bought a Grizzly smart charger, connected it to their network, and now every time I charge 1 kilowatt hour, they make a few cents, and I get nothing. At least with the subscription platform, that profit's being shared with the consumer.
So, I read about the carbon credits a couple of years ago when kind of early days, BluWave, and there's a couple of criteria that you have to follow, right? So it's got to be.
What was
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on carbon credits, but I remember reading about it kind of in the early days when we were starting this out. And there's a couple of criteria that you have to follow, right? It's got to be quantifiable, it's got to be additive, so it's got to contribute. And then one of the criteria, I forgot the word for it, but it had to have happened. It can't just happen anyways, right? So if a company was going to buy solar panels for their factory, you can't count that. I'm guessing there's some sort of loophole here.
I don't know how they're managing to
Yeah.
justify that.
So they're saying like, I'm guessing, we do this subscription, you get it for free. Like you said, it's $70,000 car. Like this isn't going to stop people, right? They're probably doing some loopholes up there, but the subscription is saying that people are gonna more likely to buy a charger, right? Well, it's kind of weak. I agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is significant, especially like, yes, some of the new EVs are $70,000, some of them are less. There's also used EVs. Also, some people finance the vast majority of the cost of their car, and to them, an upfront cost of $700 could still be significant.
Yeah. I mean, this could get into the same realm as hot water heaters. Like most people rent their hot water heaters from Enercare.
Yeah.
Who is it anyway?
And then they spend like 3 times the cost of a hot
Yeah.
water heater.
Sure, but I mean, this maybe this gets more chargers out there. Maybe they start doing DR stuff with BluWave-ai or EV Everywhere, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
people start doing it with the hot water heaters, like,
Yeah, the interesting thing is, the article says that they plan to increase the rebate to 5 cents per kilowatt hour or the incentive. And so since the ultra low overnight is 2.8 cents plus delivery and taxes, that actually works out to about 5 cents net. So if you had a 5 cent incentive, charging would literally be free.
well, now.
That would offset the 120 per year, right?
Well, yeah, but you still offset the 120 per year, but like, I probably spend about 120 a year on my ULO charging. So, yeah, not super worth it, but unless you drive a lot. But I don't know if they'll
Yeah,
give you, once you've gotten your 5 cents back to the point that you're getting 120 per year, I'm not sure if they give you more than that.
So that would be 2.4 megawatt hours. That's a lot.
Anyway. No, new product unveiling that looked interesting, a smaller EV. There's a sort of sister vehicle to this from Toyota, which is the CHR EV. Very bizarre fact. The Toyota version only comes in all-wheel drive, and the Subaru version comes in an all-wheel or a two-wheel drive variant. Kind of backwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Subaru is normally an all-wheel drive all the time, right?
Product managers, am I right? But no, like the specs are starting to look a bit more competitive. As we know, the original Toyota BZ4X was a bit behind the market in terms of range, charging performance, efficiency. Looks like they're starting to catch up their platforms, and they're still this vehicle is still based on the same platform as the BZ4X, just an updated version. The new Toyota BZ as well, they renamed it the BZ, has similarly upgraded specs. So they're starting to catch up, and they're expected to release a completely new EV platform in the coming years. And I'm sure they will catch up with the rest of the competition. Again, comes with an export. This article was talking about the increases that are happening to Tesla's energy business. We know that their vehicle business hasn't been doing extremely well in the last few months for obvious reasons. But they did see a 114% year-over-year growth this year in their Megapack and their home product here, it's called Powerwall. Yeah. Profit margins of up 26% too. Too bad.
So interesting fact, the original capacity of the Nevada battery plant was supposed to be 30 gigawatt hours per year. So that it's soaking up the original capacity of the plant. So that's a lot of batteries.
Yep. The 5,000 electric semi delivered by Volvo. So they're kind of quietly taking up a lot of the business in that space. A lot of those sales are in Europe, where they're obviously ahead of us. But yeah, Volvo ramping up quite a bit faster than the Tesla Semi. Mind you, the Tesla Semi manufacturing plant isn't done yet, so maybe things will change at that point. But yeah, a lot of the traditional truck OEMs are actually adapting surprisingly quickly. Because with the commercial stuff, like it's all in a spreadsheet and the money talks. So if you can justify it, it'll happen.
Excuse me, I'm not familiar with the term electric city.
Yeah, so we're talking about like a big rig truck, the type of truck that would pull an 18-wheeler tractor trailer, or any type of what you call Class A heavy vehicle with, tall, big dump truck, big, box truck type of thing, and of course electric.
Fully electric, it's not hybrid or anything.
No.
Yeah, it's electric, full electric.
Yeah, so Volvo's making a number of those. Most of the other, mainstream like Freightliner or whoever doing it too. It also says Tesla's only made 140 semis. So you can see kind of where Volvo is in terms of scale compared to that. I thought this article was interesting because, it's discussing the Vietnamese government or possibly the municipal government in Hanoi moving towards banning gas-powered scooters. And they are going to be incentivizing and providing support for people to transition to electric scooters. I thought it was interesting because it highlights that, Vietnam, which is not necessarily the richest country, they're still able to, and interested in pulling off these kinds of things. You often hear people say like, oh, Canada is a relatively small population, we shouldn't be leading the world in this, but, like if they can do it, we can, in our own ways. I'm certainly interested in Canada being and showing leadership. Yeah, of course, motorcycles also a lot more affordable. It doesn't take very many batteries to power a moped. And a lot of cases they're even doing like battery swap situations because the battery is so small you can just lift it out. So really nice for the people who live in these cities. So much quieter and so much less pollution because those motorcycles don't have converters or of the scale that the car has, the type of filtration and emissions regulations. So quite makes the air quite dirty. This is going to make absolutely massive difference. I mean, not just for the environment, but for the health of the people living in these cities. And that's it for the news.
Any questions?
Have you guys heard of the Canadian electric vehicle?
Or the arrow? It's an interesting idea, but like, I don't really see how they're going to scale that, or I don't know. I don't like personally. I don't. It seems like one of those things that gets hyped up. I don't see a lot of serious backing, but it would be great if we had a vehicle made in Canada.
So it's a demonstration vehicle to show what the part manufacturers in Canada could do to supply EV vehicle parts. But if you know anything about the EV industry, you'll understand that no car company will take that design and build it. There's no way they'll do that. They have their own engineers, they'll do their own thing, they think they know better and all that. So it'll never come to production, okay? But it does prove that the supply chain in Canada has what's needed to produce EVs. So, and that's what it was sponsored by the Canadian auto industry, auto manufacturers or something. Right? So very interesting concept, absolutely. But it's really a demonstration vehicle. I want to make a note on electric trucking. I've mentioned it before. If you're interested in that topic, which I happen to be, there's on YouTube, there's a channel, there's a guy who calls himself the Electric Trucker. He's a real truck driver in Germany, and he is driving only electric trucks these days. And he's got electric trucks with electric forklifts attached to them, all sorts of stuff. So Volvo was discussed before, but he's driven mostly EVCO and MAN vehicles, which are competitors to Volvo. And there are lots of these vehicles coming online. What he does is he goes across Germany and some other countries sometimes, and he shows where he charges and how much it costs, how much time it takes and all that. And it's very, very interesting. So he's actually driving trucks that today have 600 kilometers of range with a full load, okay? So these already exist, and they're starting to become more popular in Europe. So there's really no reason why we can't do that here, and we should do that here. So, okay. So thanks a lot, Lawrence. So let's talk about events. So we had a few Pillows and Coffee over the month. This one was in Stittsville. Then after that, we had the Westport Car Show. That was the only EV event that we had in the month, right? Went quite well. Talked to a lot of people. There's a Cybertruck that showed up, which was interesting. It got lots of attention. A lot of people came over because of the vehicle, right? So that gave us an opportunity to talk to them, and also the owner of the Cybertruck is a very, very much an EV enthusiast. So it was pretty good to talk to people. So upcoming events. So of course, we have our monthly meeting, which will be here again on August 25th. That happens to be my anniversary, so I will likely not be here. The 35th wedding anniversary. So I think I'll miss it. But anyways, it'll be here, and other people will be here to run it. In terms of Pillows and Coffee, so a quick TBD, I forgot to put the actual events Mike actually put the events, in our schedule, but I forgot to put them on here. And, the last one, that's incorrect. That's from the previous slide. So, the only thing I'll tell you about this is that August 16th and 23rd, we're doing something else. So we won't be doing, co-op coffee. Okay. Sorry about that. So the next event that's happening is the Avalon Summer Festival. This is an event we haven't participated in before. It's 1 to 4 p.m. So it's really not very long. We'll have a booth, the study display, but we want to be powering a few things, including a popcorn machine. Okay. So, and there's going to be an archway at the entrance to the event. There's going to be, a blown up thing with a blower like we had at Blackburn here. So we're going to be powering that. I wanted to power the bouncy castles, but anyways, the provider of the bouncy castles didn't think that he wanted to risk it. So I think he wanted to rent generators, but anyways,
Maybe he also runs a generator business.
yeah, well, yeah, he probably is renting the generators too, right? So anyways, that should be fun. So August 23rd, this is the second day we do this, Quinnswood Heights Family Fun Day. Again, there we're going to be powering a few things. So very similar to what we did there last year. Last year was the first place where we did that kind of thing, right? After that, we have Capital Pride, which actually is on the same day as a previous event. So we're going to have to split people between Bank Street and Queenswood Heights for that first day. The second day, we're going to have more people available, I guess. Right? It should be a busier day, I think, because there's a parade on that day. And if I remember correctly, last year it was busier.
It's a lot busier on Sunday.
It's a lot busier. Okay, so anyway, so it should match with availability of people. These events are up on our website, so if you wanna volunteer, you're more than welcome to sign up. We put some shifts together so that people are doing about 12 to 8 type of thing. Or if you're only available for just part of the day, you can just participate for part of the day. We will have one static display car, which is James' car. I'm still trying to work with Pride to make them understand what I want to do. Anyways, we'll work that out. Okay. And last year was a lot of fun. Seriously, it was a lot of fun doing that. Lots and lots of people. Oops. Okay, I don't have anything else here because the details are not available yet, but there will be a climate march on September 30th. It's 20th, sorry. It's being run by a bunch of environmental groups, mostly senior-led groups. But we want to have as many people as possible there. It's a Saturday, so people should be available. Now, that being said, we just got a notification today of another event on the same day. And that's the Taste of Wellington. And what they want us to do is they want us to power bouncy castles with electric vehicles. So we'll see what we'll do. We probably could set that up and have a few out there. It's supposed to be the world's longest street festival, is what they say. Anyway, so more details on that will be coming out at the next meeting. Okay. After that, we have the carp fair. So like last year, we're going to partner with cafes and again, power probably a popcorn machine or a coffee machine or something of the sort. Certainly our lighting with a vehicle. And there's a bunch of shifts available. It's a 4-day event, so it's a bit of a stretch to have people there all the time. But please, if you can, if you're available. You get a pass for the event at the same time. So if you're interested in coming to the event anyways, you would get a pass. Okay. And that's it. And of course, if you're not a member, please, we could always use a bit more funding. So if you want to join us as a member, we'd be happy to have you. And of course, if you want to donate money, that's even better. You can donate money, and there's a link on the website for that. Reminder that our YouTube channel is there, and actually we're a bit late in uploading videos, but we're going to change that. We're going to try to catch up. I want this video in particular to be up as soon as possible because of what BluWave-ai talked about. So I want to be able to talk about that a bit more and publicize it with other people, so that people start understanding what this is about, and you get more people, helping out with the tests and all that. Right? Okay. And that is it. So for the official